بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. Um, so inshallah with Rajab at our doorstep, we wanted to just read a few things about Rajab um, based on the book Lata'if al-Ma'arif by Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, the great hadith scholar and faqih. With other works as well. So, inshallah, today we'll talk about the sacred months, sacrificing in the sacred months, praying, fasting, and dua. So, first of all, the sacred months, al-ashhur al-hurum. So, we have to understand that there are sacred things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made certain things sacred, right? There are certain places that are sacred. There are certain things that are sacred, like a mushaf. There are certain times that are sacred, like Ramadan, like Dhul Hijjah, right? There are certain people who are sacred, like your family, like other people in general. But it's a very important thing to understand that it does not, there are these mystical non things that we are sacred, and there are also very tangible things that are sacred, and it's very important to understand. And so, what does it mean when you say something is sacred? Right? What does sacred mean? Question the speech marks the wrong place there. When you say something is sacred, the one it's haram, right? Isn't that a bit confusing? We say, where did you pray? I prayed fil masjid al haram, in the haram masjid. Like, what does that even mean? Something is haram, right? When the Prophet ﷺ said, this land is haram, and this day is haram, and the blood of every Muslim is haram, and the wealth of every Muslim is haram, and his self-respect and dignity is haram. Like, what does that even mean? Can anybody help understand? What does it mean when you say this is like this? You can't marry this person. They're a mahram. Like, why couldn't you marry your mum? What's wrong with marrying your mum, or marrying your daughter, or marrying your sister? Like, what's wrong with that? They say that person's a mahram to me. It means it is sacred. Good, right? Sacred means that it's sacred. We say saying haram, it means that it is sacred. It is sacrosanct. It is inviolable. You cannot violate it, right? Sanctified. So when you say a pig is haram to eat, that means you are crossing the inviolable line by doing it. When you say it is, i.e., you are sacred, and you are transgressing your own sanctity by doing that. When you say it is haram to drink alcohol, you mean you are sacred, and for you to voluntarily, without being forced to drink wine, you are crossing that inviolable line. You've crossed the red line, right? So what that means then is whenever you are mukallaf, whenever you are morally responsible, and something is haram for you, it means you are very, very special. That's what it means. It means you're very special. Okay? So when you say something is haram, it means it's special. You're special, right? It's haram for you not to pray. You're special, and you are taking something away from yourself by not praying. Don't do that. Allah made you special. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We have ennobled you. You are noble and special. Don't walk around naked. You are noble and special, therefore limited. Allah limits us in order to retain our dignity and our specialness. Something is special, right? You can't mess with it. It's inviolable, right? And so when we say, for example, we have the word ihtiram, right? Ihtiram is tied to the hip with the word haram. Ihtiram and haram, they're the same word. They come from the same source, from the word hurma, sanctity, right? In some in some Arab lands, they refer to your wife as hurmati, my wife. She's inviolable. Nobody can touch her. Nobody can talk to her. Nobody can be with her, right? She's inviolable, right? You couldn't violate her, right? So when you say, so what does it mean? Then you say ihtarama is I saw that this was Rajab and I did ihtiram of it. I took on. Ihtarama means to take on and accept and appreciate that thing. Like sama'ani fastama'tu ilayh. He made me hear, so I listened, right? Uh, uh, ضجرني that's not a good example. Uh, هداني فاهتديت به, right? He guided me, so I followed his guidance. I took on that message. I took on the lead, right? So ihtiram, to respect Rajab, to respect the Mus'haf, to respect your parents, to respect creation means that you understand that it's sacred and you deal with it in the right way, right? And then you can receive its benefit. So respect is only for your own benefit. When you respect a person, when you respect Allah, when you respect that which Allah has made haram, that which Allah has made sacred, you benefit from that thing. If you don't do ihtiram, if you don't show respect to that which is venerated and sacred in Allah's eyes, then you don't benefit. Right? This is this key thing to understand, right? And that's why respect is such an important thing. Respecting people, places, time. There are special, very, very special things, and there are general special things as well. So here the Rajab comes, we have to be different. We have to show respect to it in order to benefit from it. Otherwise, we won't benefit from it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Tawbah, the number of months in the sight of Allah, in Allah's eyes, is 12. So ordained by Him the day He created the heavens and the earth. Of them are four that are sacred. This is the right way. So do not wrong one another during these times. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done is He has created in this time certain times that are particularly important, and the haram becomes particularly haram, and the benefit becomes particularly beneficial. So you can imagine a mushaf. I have a mushaf in one hand and Robinson Crusoe in the other hand. Okay? I throw Robinson Crusoe on the floor. That's not a very good thing to do. That's not respectful, right? So the bet that I could be disrespectful to the book and do something that's not very good, right? Particularly if it's not mine. Or I could respect the book and benefit from it. Say, okay, there's good English here, there's good morals here, let's read it. Okay? So there is a level of harm and a level of benefit, right? And if I show respect to that book, I benefit from it. Then there is the mushaf. Oh, this has special thing. You can't touch it without wudu. Can't recite it in janaba. Okay? You throw on the floor. Wow, that's not just bad. That's really, really, really bad. So because of its hurma, because of its sacredness and sanctity, and because the line that Allah has drawn that is bigger, there's more rules, right? And because it's tied to more benefit. This is dearer and more the when you open it and you recite one letter, you get 10 good deeds. Okay, what if you recited 10 letters? What if you recited the whole page? What if you thought about it, sat there reflecting on it, tried to apply it in your life, taught it to other people? Totally different planet. So when something is greater in Allah's eyes, the sin is greater. Just like your child, you killed a child, you killed my child. You killed an animal that didn't deserve to be killed. They are all haram, but you killed an animal that didn't deserve to be killed. That's bad. You killed a child. That's very bad. You killed my child. I am now wrath with you because he's so precious to me. Right? That makes sense, right? So this is the nature of the sacred month. The sacred month comes in. Sins are now worse because the actions are greater. And the Prophet ﷺ, he taught us, he said, he did the dua, say, oh Allah, make the months of Rajab and Sha'ban blessed for us. So, and obviously his dua is answered. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made, Prophet ﷺ made a special dua for Rajab and Sha'ban, and let us reach Ramadan. I.e., we already know that Ramadan is blessed. You've already made it blessed, but make these 2 months very, very special. So these are warm-ups, and we have to start understanding this sanctity and start changing now, right? And that, okay, we have to show special respect to these months. Okay, and let us reach Ramadan. Okay, and so okay, when I was saying Mus'haf meaning the Quran, right? A copy of the Quran. So Al-Qurtubi, he says the verse of the Quran, don't wrong one another therein, don't wrong one another in those months. What does it mean? It means by committing sins. Don't commit sins to yourself. Don't transgress against yourself, because you are sacred in Allah's eyes. And that's why Allah has made some things haram for you, right? Allah has made things haram for you because you're special. And He doesn't want you to debase yourself. And He gets angry with you and me when we debase ourselves. And it says when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glorified be He, elevates something from one point of view, it's elevated in terms of you get more good deeds, its inviolability, the fact that you cannot violate it, increases. So the punishment for bad deeds is greater, just as the reward for good deeds is greater, right? So this is a potential time to do lots of good deeds, but also for lots of bad deeds. Just like, so in the Shafi school, for example, if you kill somebody, right, and they don't forgive you, you have to pay blood money. You have to give them camels, right? Give them camels of a certain number of camels, 100 camels of a certain wealth. If you kill your own family member, right, or you kill in the sacred months, it's now worse, and you have to pay more expensive camels, right? So this is an example of this thing. Killing somebody and killing somebody in front of the Kaaba. It's not the same. So therefore, we have to maximize our benefit, right? We have to maximize our benefit. And so one of these issues is that they used to do in the Jahiliyyah before Islam is they used to sacrifice during Rajab. Okay, they used to sacrifice during Rajab. And so Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, he says in his Lata'if al-Ma'arif, he says, as for Atira, the word Atira, which is sacrificing in Rajab, the scholars have debated it. Right? Some said yes, some said no. Most of whom held it was cancelled with the advent of Islam, i.e. it's not something that's recommended, right? It was something that existed in the Jahiliyyah. They used to slaughter a sheep during Rajab and give it to the poor, right? But that was something that's cancelled with Islam. It's not part of Islam anymore, something of the old, right? So who knows of a really important thing that's fundamental to a deen that was in the Jahiliyyah that we still do now? A pillar of Islam. Hajj, right? So in the Jahiliyyah before Islam, the pagan Arabs, they were following some of the way of the Abrahamic way of Sayyidina Ibrahim, and they were doing the Tawaf and the Hajj, etc. Right? They're going to the Kaaba in Mecca and going around it 7 times, etc. So we still do that, right? And they were slaughtering, and they were also doing this thing called Atira, which was slaughtering in Rajab, in Rajab. So he says the majority of scholars say that was cancelled, though. That's not part of the deen anymore. Just like idolatism, it was cancelled, etc. Right? And so in Bukhari and Muslim, let there be no fara' and let there be no atira. Right? Now atira is also something else in the Jahiliyyah as well, so it's not 100% clear. But anyway, in Bukhari and Muslim, let there be no fara' and let there be no atira. Fara' was when you'd have a camel, and when it has its first young, you would slaughter that as a gratitude. Say, Alhamdulillah, Allah's given me, a she camel that can bear children, and this is gonna make me money and provide for me in the future. So out of gratitude, that's called fara'. And atira was a similar kind of thing, was slaughtering in Rajab. Now, Imam an-Nawawi and the Shafis, they say it is sunnah. It is sunnah to slaughter a sheep in Rajab, just like we do on Eid. So Imam Nawawi, he says in the Majmu', says the correct position is that Imam Shafi and is that which Imam Shafi explicitly stated, and that which various hadiths indicate is that the fara' and the atira are not actually disliked, but rather recommended, and this is our school. So the Shafis, they say no, you have the means to slaughter a sheep and give the meat to the poor in Rajab, you should do it. It's a good thing. Majority of scholars, no, 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 no. That was the thing in the Jahiliyyah that was cancelled. The Shafis, they say no, there's evidence from the Prophet ﷺ that this continued in Islam, and it is something that we should keep doing. Okay, but it's not obligatory. Okay. The next thing then is ritual prayer. Is there a specific ritual prayer, salah, right, that we should be doing in Rajab? Right? The answer is no. Okay, just gonna make that easy for you so you can turn off for a bit until we talk about that in a second. And Hashit ibn Abidin, this is one of the most foremost references in the Hanafi school. He quotes Al-Bahr, I believe this Al-Bahr Ra'iq, that he says, hence it can be known that gathering on the first Friday of Rajab to perform Salat al-Raghaib, it's called Salat al-Raghaib, is disliked. And again, in the Hanafi school, this may mean bad and it may mean haram. You should double check with the Hanafi. And is an innovation. This is a bid'ah. This is not part of the deen and this is wrong. Like, we shouldn't do this. There is no such thing as gathering on the first Friday of Rajab to do a particular prayer called Salat al-Raghaib. It doesn't exist. Imam Nawawi in the Majmu' as well, he says the prayer known as, quote, al-Raghaib, 12 units of prayer between Maghrib and Isha on the first day of Rajab and 100 units on the 15th of Sha'ban is a sinful and blameworthy innovation. This is a bid'ah, right? Bid'ah, qabiha, munkara, right? This is wrong. You shouldn't do it. One should not be fooled by the hadith regarding it since it is entirely false, right? Since it is entirely false. So, uh, so for the majority of scholars, right, it's not an issue of aqidah. You know somebody who does this, okay, fine. They're following a certain position. But the majority of scholars, vast majority of scholars, across the form of madhahib, they say there's no basis for this whatsoever. You should not do this. You should not gather together for a group prayer called Salat al-Raghaib on the first Friday of Rajab. You shouldn't do that. Now, I need to go on a little tangent because this is important. As we get closer and closer to Ramadan, more people quoting hadiths, saying we should do this, shouldn't do this. Important concept. Weak hadiths. Okay? So we have to understand that a reliable hadith, a sahih hadith or a hasan hadith, a reliable hadith, an authentic hadith, this can be used as independent proof of what Allah wants us to do and what Allah doesn't want us to do. Independent proof. There's no other evidence apart from this hadith. That's enough. Okay, by default. Then we have slightly weak hadith. Okay, slightly weak. Okay, this can be used as supporting evidence. We use it in halal and haram as supporting evidence, and we use it in du'as and recommended prayers, right? So if there were a slightly weak hadith on it, we'd go with it, not a problem. So what you will hear on the internet and on the social media is, brother, that hadith is weak. That is not sufficient to say that it's not a good thing to do. It has to be very weak, right? And then there's severely weak, which is it's just useless. Why are you even quoting the hadith? Right? That's right. So I'll just give you an example, right? You know, it's just as a system in the Shafi'i school, right? And we'll talk about this in length in a second. There's a debate in the Shafi'i school. Should I, when I'm making wudu, wipe the back of my neck? Right? When I make wudu, wipe my head, should I wipe the back of my neck? One camp says yes, one camp says no. Now, both camps agree that there's no Sahih hadith on it, at least according to the Shafis, right? The Hanafis have other evidence, that's fine. But the Shafis say we both agree, both camps agree there is no Sahih hadith, there's no reliable hadith for this. Okay? Camp A says the hadith is slightly weak, so therefore we should wipe the neck. Camp B says it's very weak, so don't even bother with it. But they both agree that if there was a slightly weak hadith, we'd follow it. Does that make sense? So if someone comes along and says, brother, the hadith is weak, why are you even quoting it? that person doesn't understand how the ulama interact with hadith. Okay? Doesn't understand what's going on there. So when I said here supporting evidence, perhaps, for example, you might find supporting evidence. Let's say, for example, there's a weak hadith, plus some of the early Muslims did it, right? So here, for example, this is not related to this topic, but just as an example, Imam Ahmad has asked this question about something, and he said the hadith is not reliable. I mean, it's not right, it's weak. But the scholars of fiqh apply it, i.e., so we're going to go ahead and apply it anyway. So the content of it, we find generally the scholars from the early Muslims have been applying the content of this hadith, will go with it. It doesn't matter that it's weak. Right? This is Ibn Aqil here, not Ibn Adil. Another example, Ibn Abi Hatim, super giant hadith critic, early, right, at the time of the author of the 6 books, okay? His father and his other teachers, super important person, right? This is not some kind of modern weird scholar, right? This is something, a real legit thing. He said, among hadith narrators are those who are truthful and careful, but they make numerous mistakes and forget. The hadiths of such narrators are a proof, quote, concerning general encouragement to do that which is good or avoid that which is bad. Abstinence from this world and general Islamic teachings, but not for proving halal and haram. Notice his approach. He says, bro, if you're going to ask me to change the Sharia, I need evidence. Like, I need to know that this person is a reliable narrator of hadith. If you're asking me about a general thing in the deen, like should I pray this extra 2 rakahs on this day? Should I say this dua? A particular punishment for being bad to your mom? Why the dunya isn't worth anything? Not a problem. Give me a million weak hadiths, not a problem. Okay? So this is not modern free dingle speaking or somebody else. This is the classic sources. These are people who defined hadith science. This is how they talk about it. If it's a weak hadith, it's useful for A, it's not useful for B. But to come along and say, brother, the hadith is useless, is not useful at all. It's not sound. I just quoted that one. Okay, Abdul Rahman ibn Mahdi, right? This is one of the greatest, like, shuyukh, the teachers of Imam Bukhari, that generation of that really early scholars. Super important, right? He said, when we narrate hadith to do with general rewards and punishments and specific good deeds, right? Oh, should I pray on this day? Should I do this special dua? Should I give sadaqah on this in this particular way? Whatever it is, we are lax in verifying chains of transmission and critiquing narrators. So again, we're not trying to say there's no sahih hadith on it. We're trying to say there's not even a weak hadith that's good enough to follow. That's what we're trying to say. So again, somebody comes along and says, brother, that hadith, don't say that dua, it's a weak hadith. Wrong. Say the dua because it's a weak hadith. Right? Say it. If it's super weak, don't just avoid it. That's because it's probably it's like 90% a lie. So I believe Ibn Rajab, he said that. He said, this hadith is like the hadith that say you should pray this special prayer in whatever it is in the beginning of Rajab. It's actually fabricated, like somebody made that lie, in which case you should not apply it because someone just made that up. And if you apply it, you're kind of confirming that lie. So you shouldn't do that. So there's a big difference between maybe the Prophet did it, I'll do it, versus it's a lie, why are you doing it? There's a big difference between the two of them. Here, sorry, this is from Imam Ahmad here. He says, when we narrate hadiths from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu we are strict regarding chains of transmission and critiquing narrators. He said, I added this thing. He said we're strict. But when we narrate hadiths from the Prophet ﷺ regarding specific good deeds, something that neither establishes a new ruling. We already know about prayer, right? Like, I'm not trying to create a new type of worship. We already know about dua. We already know about umrah. We already know. I just want to know a specific thing about it. Okay? It's not proving anything new. It neither establishes a ruling nor removes it. We are lax in verifying chains of transmission. It doesn't really matter if it's a weak hadith, not a big deal. But it doesn't matter if it's a super weak hadith. Okay? So this is a key methodology that you have to have on our mind. Somebody shares a dua, is it weak or is it super weak? Not is it sahih or not. That doesn't matter. Not a big deal. It's not how the ulama work. Okay. Najm ad-Din al-Tufi, one of the great late Hanbalis. He's talking about a prayer that's going to come up. Well, this is called Salat al-Tasabih. Right? People talk about Salat al-Tasabih, right? It's a particular prayer with a particular format. And so listen to how he's speaking, right? He is a student of Ibn Taymiyyah, okay? Huge hadith scholar, huge Hanbali. What did he say? He says, in spite of this, we have already mentioned in our introduction that categorizing a hadith as reliable or unreliable is not a clear-cut matter, right? So it's like, brother, hadith is sahih. I mean, I think. Or maybe you might disagree with me, number one. So the fact that this hadith may be categorized as unreliable should not hinder us from acting accordingly, because it may actually be correct after all. I.e., the Prophet may have said that. So this hadith is not super weak. The Prophet may have done it. Of course, I'm going to try and do it. Why not? If the Prophet may have done this dua, why shouldn't I do the dua? If he may have encouraged a specific thing, why don't I do it? Not a problem, right? And so he's showing you a methodology is that just because it's weak, it doesn't mean it should be ignored. So again, we're saying that's fine. If there were a weak hadith, we'd follow it. But if there's a super weak hadith, just ignore it, forget about it. Okay, so slightly weak, great for du'as, specific sunnahs, general Islamic teachings. Oh, he gave the khutbah and there was a weak hadith in it, not the end of the world. He's not trying to prove halal and haram. Severely weak, just forget about it. Right? That's something else. Okay, so hadith police, right? Before you start getting crazy, get onto your um get your search warrant before you do anything there. Okay, non-ritual dua. So non-ritual prayer. Why do I say this word? I say this word because it's very important for people to understand that we always pray, right? Muslims pray non-stop. Okay, we always pray. And so when you say salah, that's prayer. When you say dua or dhikr, it's also prayer, right? So dua is a special thing to do in Rajab. So Ibn Umar is narrated with a possibly weak hadith, Allahu alam. Imam Bayhaqi narrates this in his Shu'ab al-Iman. He said there are 5 nights that supplication, dua, is not rejected, right? So these are special times to do it. The night before Friday, which is, what do we call that in English? The night before Friday. We call that Thursday night, right? So Thursday night is a time to make dua and to do salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, to do Surah Al-Kahf, for example, right? Before the first day of Rajab, either they call it Laylat, right? The night that precedes the first day of Rajab, the night before the middle of Sha'ban, and the night before the 2 Eids, right? So these are special times that we should make dua. So the first day, the night before the beginning of Rajab. And Imam Bayhaqi, he says there are many ahadiths on making dua in the beginning of Rajab, but they are not strong. It doesn't matter. No, we should still do it. So the beginning of Rajab, again, which is around the corner, we should take the opportunity, make big dua the night before Rajab, that day, that first week, that first, etc. Throughout this time, this is a very special time. Make dua, make istighfar, make dua for all sorts of things. Okay, and then fasting. Okay. Also, Imam Bayhaqi narrates in his Fada'il al-Awqat, special times, he says that the Prophet ﷺ said, this in other sources as well, fast some of the month of the sacred months and leave some days. Fast some of the sacred months and leave some days. Fast some of the sacred months and leave some days. And he said it 3 times, right? And so why did he leave some days to not make it like Ramadan, right? And so some ulama, they say it's totally fine to fast the whole time, not a problem. Right? It's not a problem to fast the whole time because right now there's no issue of us being confused. So right in the beginning of the Deen, some people are accused. So Imam Bayhaqi and Imam Shafi and others, they kind of said things like that. It's totally fine. But anyway, being precautious. So fasting a lot of Rajab or most of Rajab and leaving a few days here and there. This is something that we should do. We should try our best to do. All things being equal, right? Khair. And so there's no harm in fasting all the way now to the end of Ramadan. It's not a problem, right? But again, the problem would be then what? What if you're not strong enough, etc., etc., etc. And Imam Bayhaqi also he narrates, he says that from the Prophet ﷺ that he said, indeed in paradise there is a river called Rajab. Right, so this month that is coming, there's a river in paradise that's named after it. It is whiter than milk and sweeter than honey. Whoever fasts a day of Rajab, Allah will allow him to drink from that river. Okay, so that's all we have for Rajab. If we have any questions or queries, I'm sorry there was a whole technical tangent, but some of these things, again, we live in a time where, of confusion. It's important to share those things. You either talking to people saying, Astaghfirullah, why are you doing that? There's no Sahih Hadith on it. Or you're saying, oh, we should do it, etc. You just say, okay, it's not an issue of Aqidah. Um, not an issue of Aqidah, but the vast majority of scholars who say there is not even a weak, a possibly acceptable hadith on it, and we should not do that at all. So a question regarding the 27th of Rajab and Isra Mi'raj, that is a very minority opinion. It is in principle possible that Isra Mi'raj happened on 27th of Rajab, but majority of scholars say that's that's most likely not the case at all, right? And then is there anything specific that we should do on the 27th of Rajab? No, there isn't. So fast, dua. This is what we should be doing in Rajab. According to the Shafi'is, you should slaughter as well. Why not? What's wrong with doing that? Why not? Um, you say, oh Allah, if the Shafi'is are right, please accept it as a special day of for Rajab. Otherwise, it's charity. Excuse me. Find somebody in a country where they need meat, etc. And so Isra Mi'raj is most likely in Rabi al-Awwal, I believe. So what we find. Allahu A'lam. And so there's no harm in somebody talking about any of these particular things or doing anything particular as a one-off. The issue is making it a specific day and these kind of things. This is not um, promoting an idea that is very quite unlikely is not such a good thing to do. So let's go back to the beginning thing. This is a sacred time. We're treading on special times and places, so we should be careful. Okay, so the question here. I've heard many things on double dipping. Um, Fasting the 16th, 17th, and 18th, or Mondays and Thursdays. And then it also counts as other fasts, like intention for fasting, Rajab should be different. No, that's totally fine. So, for example, you say, Ya Allah, I have qada fasts to do. Ya Allah, please. I'm doing my qadars right now. I'm going to start doing my qadars tomorrow. And Ya Allah, please accept these, for the next whatever, how long you're going to be doing them. Accept it as Rajab as well. Nothing wrong with that. Coinciding, double dipping like you do. That's fine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is generous, right? You can double dip as much as you want. It's not a problem. What you can't do is combine two things that are sort of in and of themselves. Like today, I'm doing fasting Ramadan plus doing qada. You can't do that. You can't combine those. But you could do, for example, tahiyyat al-masjid and fajr. So you arrived at the masjid and they're praying fajr. So you pray fajr with them, for example, as tahiyyat al-masjid, greeting the masjid. So the point of greeting the masjid is not disrespecting the masjid by arriving and not praying there. So you're saying, Ya Allah, I'm saying Allahu Akbar now with the intention of fulfilling my obligation, plus fulfilling the communal obligation and praying in a group. Plus, Ya Allah, I don't want to disrespect your masjid by not praying in it, so I'm praying in it. So that's totally fine. Okay. And so here there's a question. It says, doing a particular istighfar. So so as I seek much forgiveness from Allah in Rajab because every hour of it, of the month of it, Allah frees people from the fire. So yes, we're going to say the general recommendation, the dua includes istighfar, right? And so what's that source there? Ad-Dailami. This is the Musnad al-Firdaus by Ad-Dailami. It's a very late work, and by basically by definition, all those hadiths are weak, and many of them are extremely weak. Um, so inshallah, it's not too weak. But but Rajab then is this is our lead up to Ramadan, obviously, right? So imagine let's imagine Ramadan like a person, right? Imagine, for example, you're going to meet the sheikh, okay? You're going to meet the sheikh and at the airport, you're like, oh man, I'm going to meet the sheikh. I want to ask him a question, one other question, right? Now, while you're waiting to meet the sheikh, you're on your phone looking at something you shouldn't look at, sharing a video that you shouldn't share, having thoughts that you shouldn't have, grudges that you shouldn't do. And you're like, oh man, I'm about to meet the sheikh. So now you start thinking, you're not trying to show off to the sheikh, but you're like preparing that it's going to come. So like, oh man, I should change. Shouldn't do that. Shouldn't do that, right? I'm a woman and like my sleeves kind of like halfway up. It's like, no, I should cover myself properly. So this is what we're doing with Ramadan, right? Like it's an embarrassment or it's an awkward situation. Ramadan is here and we haven't prepared, right? So this is what we're trying to do now. So the companions, yeah, so why would you make, so the question about say making Umrah during Rajab, why would you do that? Because we are in the Ashhur al-Hurum, because we're in the sacred months, right? And so everything in the sacred months is greater. So, but I have a question for all of you. What is more important in the Ashhur al-Hurum, in these sacrosanct months? Doing more sunnahs or avoiding more bad? What's exactly, right? So again, the shaitan comes to us and says, you should you should you should do Quran. Yeah, it's great. You should do as much as you can. That's great. But you understand this is a sacred month. It's inviolable, right? And last month says don't wrong each other. I'm going to give you more rewards for your prayers and everything, and go and do Umrah now and do anything you're going to do now. That's great. But be careful because the stakes are higher for you, right? You are now stepping on someone's toes. Don't do it, right? Khair, inshallah. Okay, any other questions or queries? Exactly. So that's exactly the bid'ah that we have, Sister Navia, right? Because they understood weak means false. So they were told this idea that a weak hadith is a false hadith, therefore you shouldn't act upon it. But that's wrong. It's just totally wrong. So across the board, all the madhahib, quote here, quote there, everybody, they're all doing the same thing. Everybody's acting upon weak hadiths in these kind of things. It's recommended. So, like we already know that the just it's called dhikr, right? The iqama, the adhan and iqama as dhikr. So you're just saying these words. So you said it in the kid's ear, like why can't you say dhikr? The weak hadith then made it possible that it was specifically recommended. So you acted upon it, not a problem, right? So it's unfortunate. So it's very sad that this happens. That people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tries the average Muslim with ulama that come along and promote ideas like this and make it confusing for everybody, right? Would it be sinful to share a severely weak hadith because of its high probability? Yeah, you shouldn't do that. Is it sinful? No, you should give it a source. For example, right? So here's a sister, for example, she shared this hadith. It said, where is it? So she says, it's narrated, seek forgiveness from Allah in Rajab because in every hour of the month, Allah frees people. Daylami. Thank you very much. The ulama, they say, Man asnada ilayk faqad ahida ilayk. Whoever gives you their source has made you responsible to find out. So I didn't say that the Prophet ﷺ said these words. I said that Daylami said that the Prophet ﷺ said these words. So you go and ask who Daylami is, right? In a book, it says this. I don't know if that's true or not, though, right? So if you give you a chain transmission, you show your sources, you're not responsible, right? I'm not responsible then. right? The person says, "Oh, you're a liar." I said, "You didn't read what I said." It says Daylami. They're like, "Yeah, but who's Daylami?" Or you find out who Daylami is, and you tell me if the hadith is reliable or not, right? That's why we always say, "Wa'an Abi Hurairah." Abu Hurairah said. I'm not saying the Prophet said it. Maybe he didn't say it. I'm saying Abu Hurairah said that, and I trust Abu Hurairah, right? But so if you say Qala Rasulullah without your source, now you're responsible. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Okay, do you have a source for that?" Now you made that claim. Now you're responsible for it. Does that make sense? So if you're not sure, don't share it. If you're going to share it with the source. There we go. I personally I don't like to share things like that, even with the source. Right? Now, if it is fabricated, it is haram to do that. You shouldn't do that.